Well, Queens, I have a guest with me today. I am so excited to chat with this guest. I'm going to introduce you by sharing her bio, and then, of course, we can go dive straight in. So, I have with me Marla Mervis Hartmann, the creator of Love Your Body, Love Yourself. She helps women confidently say yes to that question. After overcoming her own struggles with food, exercise, and body image through self compassion, Marla now empowers women to appreciate their bodies, make nourishing choices, and build confidence. She works at IPONO, Eating Disorder Recovery Centre, and has been a body image expert and Reiki master at Journey Malibu. Marla has been featured at TEDx Salinas, I think I got that right, and has focused on women's sexual wellness, postpartum care, tantra, yoga, massage therapy, and lifestyle coaching. Her mission is to inspire women to feel good about themselves. Living in Maui with her husband and son, she works as a coach, speaker, and Reiki master. Her first book, Befriend Yourself, will be released October the 1st this year, 2024. So, Marla, welcome to the Body Love Binge.
Woo, so excited to be here. Yay.
Shall we dive in with the 10 rapid fire questions?
Yes, bring it.
That never rapid, let's be real, but let's dive in anyway.
Well, let's see. Let's see what I can do.
Okay, number one, what's your favorite book of all time?
Oh, what pops in my head is Chronicles of Narnia. I
Mhm.
love that. My son and I read that. And it's just I just still have like vivid just things in my mind. Or I love that book. That
Love
whole series. Yeah.
that. Okay, number two, what's your go-to karaoke song?
Olivia Newton-John, Let Me Be There.
Love. Number three, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received and did you take it?
One of the things my Reiki master said to me when I first learned Reiki, and I was having a little bit of a spiritual crisis, and because I wanted to heal everything. And she said, "You're in control. Ask the universe, ask God to back up." And I remember being like, I was like, okay, I have chills right now. It's just like, this is too much. Like, just, I'm okay. And I just kind of came back to myself. And so that was really powerful.
Yeah, I'm just feeling into that. We
Mhm.
get to decide, right?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think we do more than we realize.
Yes.
More than we realize.
Yeah. All right. Number four, if you could live, and it has to be a city in this question, apparently. If you could live in any city in the world, where would it be?
Some little city that I've never been in, some little place that I've never been in, a secret hidden like garden that you go down and all this. I feel like I've been there in my mind and in my meditations. I want to live in one of those cities.
Can I join you, please?
Yes, please.
Love that. Number five, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
I like to lie down on my couch on my lanai, listen to the birds and listen to like a meditation and have no one talk to me and
Mm.
just sink and sink as much as I possibly can.
Mm. That is so nourishing. I'm still
Yeah.
working on doing that. It's
It
not
has been
feeling.
it's been a muscle. It's definitely been a muscle. It's not been something that like I've been great at. It's literally the muscle of learning how to rest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm strengthening that muscle currently. It's
Yeah.
that's kind of muscle for now, because there'll be more that I
Yes.
feel is asking to be strengthened. So thank you for sharing that. It just helped to remind me what I'm doing as well.
Good.
Number six, what's your favorite food?
Chocolate.
Oh, yes, good answer. Number seven, what's your favorite smell?
Lavender.
Mm.
Or chocolate brownies. Oh, chocolate brownies that are just being made.
Mm. I
It's
wish
like,
you could have that as an air freshener that wasn't chemical and that actually smelled
right? Yeah.
for sure. Okay, we just have to bake. We'll just have to bake chocolate
Have to
brownies
bake
every
them
day, and then
all.
we get it. Okay,
Yeah.
number eight. Who has been the most influential person in your life?
My mom, for sure. I mean, I know that's such a cliche, but she's such a love. She's just such a generous, heartful service, God-loving woman. And, so definitely have learned so much from her.
I love that. I wouldn't say it's a cliche. I wouldn't say that in my answer. I love my mum dearly, but that she would not be the most influential person I would choose to how to have an eating disorder, then perhaps.
Right.
So I love that you said your mum.
Mm.
Number 9, what's one thing you can't leave the house without?
My water bottle and my phone.
And number 10, what do you want people to take away from this podcast?
That they don't have to do it all on their own. They don't have to figure it all out. They don't have to figure out how to love themselves, eat well, like that there's support and there's care and there's love, and that it's totally possible to let go of that control and find a deeper way, more loving way.
Before we get into the questions I have for you, and sometimes I go off in tangents because I'm very intuitive, so we might get there, we might not. I personally, and I'm sure my audience too, would love to know a little bit about you, Marla. So why do you do what you currently are doing? How did you get here?
Well, I think probably like a lot of your guest speakers, we've gone on this journey of healing our relationship with our body and food. So, I was doing all the things. I was doing the dieting. Well, I never dieted because I knew better, right?
I
But I did,
didn't.
right. I just restricted, and I was very orthorexic, and I was an exercise bulimic. So I did all the things to control my body and my food. And I was born with a very thin, strong, and I was born with a lot of confidence. However, I had a lot of attention on my body as a child. So I was a curvy little girl, and I got a lot of attention, which I remember just being like, what? What? I'm just running around like at the pool with bikini, bathing suit on. And it didn't quite make sense until I remember it clicking, being like, oh, my body needs to be this way. I need to make it this way and keep it this way. And so a lot of control came, and I was an actress and I was a dancer and I was an athlete. And I just felt at the very core that my body needed to be a certain way in order for me to continue to get the love and the attention. That I actually thought that that's why people loved me and cared for me, which was never the case. Like when I look at my life and I look at the people around me and how the people surround me, they really don't care. But it's that diet culture and the way that I've coped with all my emotions has been by dieting. When I talk about emotional eating, I talk about emotional dieting, right? It's the same thing. It's the control. And so I believed for a really long time that the only issue that I had in my life was my body and my food. And if I would get that all under control, then my life would be so much better. So I thought that meant eating perfectly, never, binging, never overeating, and then having that magical number and keeping it. And then my life would start. And of course, how many times have that crashed and burned? But I remember very specifically a time where that was like, whoa, I am that weight and I'm absolutely miserable. Yeah. So I've had a lot of dark nights of the soul along the way, right? Some of them being at my thinnest, some of it being with chocolate coming out my nose, right? With so much food intake. And I feel like recovery is not linear, right? It's very cyclical, and it goes up and it goes down and it's around. And it was after a longer period of being like, wow, I think I'm good. I think, and there's a lot of story in that of the recovery and how I got there, but it was those moments where I'm like, oh, and I remember being pregnant with my son and being like, oh my gosh, that's what this is all about. This is what all my journey of, because all my journey of becoming a Reiki master and my yoga and my Tantra is all about healing my relationship with my body and food.
Yeah.
It's been all about that. So, and then at that point, it's like, okay, let's do this. Let's help others. Let's serve others. Let's help other women find freedom, figure it out.
I
So
had
here
that experience in terms of when I got to where I was, and I say was because we're always evolving and growing, right? Always, if we choose to do so. I got to a point where I was like, I need to share this with other people. Like, I cannot just go about my business. I need to share that you don't have to suffer. You don't have to. And I thought that's just the way life was.
yes.
So you had that experience too, that feeling to bring this into other people's lives. What, I know this is such a big question. What would you say that were the most profound things that helped you go from the bulimia and the binge eating and the obsession, all that, to full recovery? Like, what were the most profound things? I'm sure, I know it's a journey. I know it's not linear.
Ooh, so I remember having one of those moments, and this was early on in recovery, where I was such in a tizzy, and I would just remember like being like so uncomfortable in my skin and being like, I just can't, I don't know what is going on, I can't figure it out, I can't, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm sitting and I'm meditating, and I think I'm just probably like lamenting to God, and I heard very strongly this voice that said, I got you. Let go. Give me your food. Give me your body. And I I said no. I remember being like, I can't do that. That's too big. But I knew that was the answer. And I cried. I cried after that because I was like, I know the answer and I know what's going to give me freedom. And I I can't go there. I could not trust that a higher power that because my belief was, if I gave my food and my body over to this beautiful, loving force, this higher self or this voice inside of me, this all knowing, that I was going to gain tons of weight. I was going to be fat, right? And that to me equaled not being loved, not being accepted, not being all these things. So for the next, I don't know, let's see, I remember that was my New York City apartment. So I've been gone from there for a really long time. But I had to learn how to turn that over. I had to give my food this meal. I had to ask, and what that looks like is asking my body, what does it want? Right? Learning how to trust my body, that when it said it was hungry, that I could actually feed it. And learning when it said it was done, that I could actually stop and feel safe. And learning to not go for a run when my body just wanted to rest. Those were the moments. That was what that voice was talking about. Right. And so it wasn't, I don't think I was just supposed to turn it over and just be done. I had to learn how to trust. And the more I trusted and the more I surrendered, the more that I trusted, the more I surrendered, and the more that I realized it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that even more recently in a deeper way of really like, okay, I really want to surrender. Like, what does this body want? And I think that journey with our body and our food never really stops because it's so intimate. It's the most intimate thing that we do is to eat. And we take something in. It's for us. It's nourishment that we get to have pleasure with, right?
I love that you've connected, because of course it is connected, surrendering with trust. Because the ultimate question I used to have when I started to hear about surrender in recovery, and I was like, but how? How how do you actually just let go when I saw myself like hanging onto a cliff edge and then someone saying let go, and me not knowing if there's a net there, or if I'm going to literally die, or I'm going to crash into 1,000 pieces, or someone's going to catch me in a nice fluffy cloud. It's that not knowing, and then that trust that comes into this. And I love how you actually then shared, you took it step by step, one meal at a time. And then when you had that little bit of extra trust built up as evidence that the brain can be like, actually, we can trust a little bit more now. And then you build on that, then it's easier to surrender it and then let go, because you have that trust that no matter what happens, you can handle it.
Yeah. And I think that it's not kind to do that to the body. It would not be kind for you to let go and just fall back. It's actually an act of not holding your body and being like, okay, I'm going to surrender. Hey, can I get someone to help me come down from this ledge? Can I assure, can someone put their hand on my back? Can someone talk to me and whisper in my ear what to do next?
Yes.
And I think at this point, and if you're listening to this podcast, you do know that there are people out there that can help you and know the steps to do. And I love one of your podcasts where you're talking about like how I believe you were answering a question. It was like, how sick do you have to be in order to get into recovery? And I think that in the importance that just struck me, because I feel like one of the things I say to people a lot is like, this negative body image, this diet culture is so normalized that we don't even realize how good we can have it.
Yes.
How good can you stand it? How good can you allow your life to be? And that is a trust, right? That is a, whoa, this feels really good. Wow. And I remember those moments where like, oh my gosh, I feel really good in my body. Is this safe? Oh my gosh. And then I remember being like, this voice is like, oh, don't worry. We're going to feel bad about ourselves in a little. And then I'd feel better. It was like, okay, we're going to, because that was safe. Right. So I would try it on for a while, feel really good, feel really alive, and get a little nervous and fall back and then go back in and be like, no, I'm okay here. This is safe. Right. So it's this dance, right? It's tantra, really. It's like how much life force can I hold? How can I allow myself? What nourishment can I give? What nourishment do I allow my body to be filled with food and pleasure and all these things? And if we're not raised in an environment where that is really fostered or even understood, it takes a while for us to just let go of some of the negativity and even realize that there's a whole other life that we can live, whole other experience.
Yes. Oh, that is so nourishing to me, because you're so right. And I believe that's connected to that worthiness, knowing that deep down you are worthy of receiving that joy, that happiness that might not feel safe. But then, like you said, it's a dance of being like, okay, it's safe to feel this happy. And then you can go in your comfort zone a little bit again and like berate your body with a thought for a few minutes. And then you step back into what you want. And it's that gentle step by step, increasing your capacity to receive and be with pleasure, joy, and peace. That was a big one for me.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that learning how to hold pleasure is just as challenging as learning how to let go of the pain and to remove it.
Yes.
And I don't think it's talked about as much, especially when it comes to our body and our food.
Yeah. Let's dive into that then. Is it one of the questions? It doesn't really matter. I want to talk about, here, pleasure. So, pleasure practices and self-care rituals and sensual experiences, how do those empower us to reconnect with these beautiful bodies that we have?
So I'll tell a story. I remember when I first started learning about Tantra and becoming a Tantra teacher, and I had such an amazing guide, Dawn Cartwright. You can all look her up. She's lives and breathes, and she is Tantra. And I can just remember still being in that uncomfortable place in my body, but starting to feel better. And I can remember just feeling so much sensual, sexual energy in myself and being like, it does not matter what I look like. I feel amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's, and I think that we think in this culture that if we look a certain way, then we feel better,
Mm.
right? I am allowed to feel good when my body looks a certain way. And when we turn our attention into feeling good for the sense of feeling good, and really that can look like so many things for us. That can look like waking up and going outside and looking at, the sun coming up, or, listening to the birds. That can be taking your food and smelling it before, right? That can be putting your phone down and looking at the person who's with you and having a conversation. That can be petting your dog without holding the phone and really enjoying these moments. So we it's important. And I used to teach a course called the Pleasure Plan. And lots of times people put pleasure with instant gratification, or they put pleasure only into that category of sexuality. But pleasure is, how am I talking to myself? Is that bring me a pleasurable experience? How am I moving my body? And for me, that was a big one. I really had to unlearn and relearn how to move my body from a place of loving myself and, wanting to have strong muscles, not because I wanted to just have, the butt the way and this the way, and learning how to, not do hard exercises that totally whacked my adrenals out. And
Yeah.
then the fear of that, oh my gosh, but I have to, right? I have to. If not, I'm going to, right? It's like, oh, but what's the most pleasurable moment? What does my body really need? And so this is the thing, like what I just told you, that little bit of like, I really want to do this exercise, but my body really doesn't want it. There's that in between place that it feels so uncomfortable.
Mm.
And it's in that discomfort that we have to sit with and be with and take breaths so that we can get to the other side, which is the pleasure. And that is the practice. And that's what I'm talking about, of like, oh, it actually is a practice, and it is challenging to able to choose pleasure, choose ourselves. It is that moment of, no, I have to beat myself up,
Mm.
and being like, no, actually, I don't.
Yes. And then guilt, usually, from my past experience, for me personally and with my clients, there's pleasure, and then it's like the cousin of pleasure is then guilt. Pleasure in sex, pleasure in food, pleasure in resting. Like, can we talk about the guilt? That I don't want to be sexist here because I'm not ruling out men, of course, but that in general, the guilt women feel when we're in pleasure or have received pleasure. It's almost like, now I've had pleasure, then I've almost got to have a pain to kind of counter it out somehow.
Right. And that's very great awareness, right? So even if you are aware of that, that's what you do, then you can go into that experience and be like, okay, and now here's when the guilt comes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the recovery. It's not to not even have the guilt at
Mm-hmm.
the beginning. It's to be like, and in comes guilt. Well, hello, guilt. Here you are. Oh, I know you. You're going to make me want to do this and that and this and that. And sometimes you follow guilt out the door and then you go, and do whatever. Or sometimes you can just be like, okay, here's the guilt. Let me be with this. What is this part of me afraid of?
Yes.
Right. And these are these moments sometimes where it feels like, I've had those moments, and you probably have too. Victoria was like, this is so big. I can't hold this. I feel like I literally feel like I'm going to come undone.
Yeah.
I'm going to die if I have to hold this. And this for me is where prayer has been so powerful, or this is when it's like, this is too big. And for me, people can use a different higher power, nature, God, goddess, But for me, it's like, God, please hold this with me, be here with me, take this away, help me to understand how to be with this feeling, bring me in support right now. Right. And when I just say that, I just feel like this melting. And that's also where the level of trust comes in. It's like some people may be like, I have no idea how to do that. I don't even trust that that's going to happen. And that's okay. It's like that baby step of like, I'm going to try this out. How does that even make me feel to do that? Well, it does make me feel like I'm trying something different. That's good. I'm breaking up the pattern. Okay. Oh, that actually felt a little bit better in my body. I'm feeling a little bit calmer. Does that mean that worked? Or it can be like, oh, that's how you bring God into these moments.
Mm.
Right. And so for those of you who already have that maybe spiritual practice or whatever, and that's one of my specialties is connecting these places. It's like God, our highest self, that highest voice in here is really what we're wanting to tune into, because we have all the other voices that are freaking out, but we want to turn up the dial on the highest vibration of love, which
Mm.
sometimes comes from within us. And sometimes we have to access from somewhere else because there's no space. It's not living in me. I don't know where that is, but I can't find it.
But it's always there if we call upon it.
It really is.
Yeah. And how does, I mean, let's segue into prayer, mindfulness, being with self, learning how to be quiet. How does all of that help with body image and how you feel in your body and about your body?
Well, it's literally in these moments where we're in so much pain that I have found that I am down on my knees. It's like dark night of the soul sort of things. It's just like, okay, I'm going to try this. Right. And that's when the reprieve happens. That was when that's where the surrender happens. Right. But I don't want to have to get to some dark night of the soul. I don't want to have to be at the end of my rope in order to call in a higher vibration of love. I want that to be present all the time. I want to tune into that in the morning and be like, how does the highest, most serviceful, how does Marla as a soul want to show up today? Right? How can I show up in my fullness today? And sometimes I may not know, but it's really aligning from the beginning of the day and being like, for me, it's just like, God, please guide me today. And for me, it's also like in these moments of like, I do not know how I'm going to do my food when I get to this party. I'm always anxious at parties with food. Like, and it is in those moments of like, I will slow down and be like, God, please be present for me in these moments. Please support me and help me. And I make it as a nudge to go and call a friend or someone or my coach who was helping me. I've had so many people help me. And for me, those have been my lifelines. Those God, higher self, speaks to us through other people.
Yes.
Right. So it's being aware that you may not necessarily hear the voice that I heard at the beginning when I was sharing that, but you hear truth through someone else. So it's also inundating yourself maybe with some spiritual text or something that just makes you feel good.
Mm.
But essentially, we want to come back to ourselves. We want to come back to the feeling of love. If you're in that space of love, you're going to know that you're on the right track.
Yeah. And you will feel it. It's an intuitive feeling that you will know, like when someone says something and you just resonate here, like, and I'm pointing to my heart for those that aren't watching the video, or in your gut if you're more of a feeler, in your gut area. And something that came up when you were sharing, Marla, is I think this was from Existential Kink. Have you read the book
Oh,
Existential?
my favorite. I've done so much work in there. Did her course. So good.
So you'll be able to know if this is from this book or if it's from another book that I'm mixing in. It was about pain, women's pain in general, and I was having a really challenging body image experience. I remember I was kind of halfway through recovery. I'd gained a lot of weight. It was really sunny outside. I was sat practicing being with myself in the sun, and I looked down at my legs and I just saw all the cellulite, like in the light of day, on my legs. And I was kind of like, oh my God, that's so disgusting. And I was like, right, remember what the book said. It's not my pain, it's the pain of all the women in the world. So I would breathe in the pain without personalizing it. So I'd think of all the other women in the world who were feeling the exact same way that I was right then. And for some reason, whether it was that because I was getting out of my own head and I wasn't making it all about me, when I was breathing in the pain and just breathing out peace and healing, it was like I was doing it for the other women, but I was doing it for me too. And that just helped in an instant. Is that from that book, or is that from a
That's an actual Buddhist practice. It's a Buddhist prayer, but it is in the book.
okay,
Yes.
was that book?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's so beautiful.
Mm,
That is just so beautiful. That's, if you're wanting a tangible tool on how you can do it, like that's exactly it,
yeah.
right? That moment, because we have to understand. And I think what happens, and if you're listening to this podcast, you do know that a lot of people are suffering from this, but I think that we can feel so alone.
Yeah.
Can feel so alone in this. And it's actually, unfortunately, so many women, so many people are struggling with this. So if we can put ourselves in this space of like, I'm sending love to myself and to all the other people who are looking down at their legs. Right.
Right. It was so
Yeah.
healing in an instant. And then that's from that moment, little things that were the big things. For example, in the hot weather, I would never wear shorts because I was conscious of my legs and all of that. So when I had the experience of the pain, not my pain, I then would be like, well, if I can't wear the shorts for me, I can goddamn wear the shorts for another woman who is conscious about her legs, and I can be an example of freedom for her. And I guess that's how I stepped into coaching, because as I was like wanting to help others, I was of course healing myself, because we're all one anyway. It was just easier for me to like see it as sort of the we instead of the me, but of course it was about me too.
Exactly. Yes. And isn't that how God works? Right.
Yes, exactly. That's the whole point. Like we're all one. And I never used to really grasp that. And it's not something you can intellectually get, really. It's that feeling, that deep inner knowing that all the thoughts aren't my thoughts, they're universal thoughts that everyone has thought, will think, and will think again. So the more
Right. I think,
thoughts,
yeah.
yeah,
And that brings us into the even like diet culture thoughts. Like I'm not above that. I still have those thoughts. They still come in where I look at myself and I feel like, oh my gosh, I need to lose weight. It's like, oh, that's just, if we are all one, then that diet culture experience of like, these are thoughts that are in the field and I don't have to believe it.
mm-mm.
I do not have to believe it in this moment. Can I let that thought go by?
And you can, from this field of infinite thoughts, you can pick one that serves you. So you can be like, right, that body image thought didn't serve me. It's not mine. I'm not going to make it personal. It's not a fact. I don't have to believe it unless I choose to. So out of this plethora, if that's a word, of thoughts, I'm going to pick one that actually serves me, because all thoughts are created by, I mean, who, what? This is like deep questions here. The thoughts are there. They're not personal unless we make them personal. And let's then dive into like the diet culture and society, and how does that prominently brainwash us, for lack of a better word, which is probably quite fitting, to hate our bodies and hate ourselves. And when you shared your story at the beginning, Marla, and this was personal and true for me too, you thought or truly believed that if you fixed your body and your food, you would be fine. You would like shit rainbows and butterflies and all sorts of things would fall into place. Why do we believe at our core that that is true?
Because we've been taught it. We've been taught it. We've been force fed it. It's been all around us. It's been by people who love us, who
Yeah.
give us attention. It's by people who tell us that our bodies are wrong. It's from, I think, sometimes the positive attention around it just as much as the negative,
Yeah.
right? I I don't think that we're making it up,
Mm-mm.
right? And that's why it's so challenging, because now not only do we have to bump up against those beliefs, but we have to believe something different,
Yeah.
right? And it's also about, who are we surrounded by? Who are we wanting to be around? Who is our community? What friends are we connected with? Are they the ones who are just talking about their bodies and diet culture, the thought? And we even have to realize what that is, right? It's someone coming up and them commenting on your body right away and asking you what you ate. Like, that may be normal, but that's not what we want.
Mm-mm.
We need to even be aware of, like, oh, that's diet culture right there.
Yeah. And it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Oh, what
Like,
are you eating? Oh,
yeah, like you said, it may be quote unquote normal, but it's far from fucking normal if you tune into your true loving higher self and nature and connecting to your body. That is far from normal, right? So we need to make a new normal, which is what you and I are both doing, and so many other incredible people in the world. I mean, was it Gandhi that said, "Be the change you want to see in the world"? We have to go first. So I think it's important what you said. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Do you have any tips on, let's say, someone works for a company and they enjoy their job, so it's not as easy as just like leaving the job. And let's say their office is surrounded by people who are the usual dieting, talking about weight loss, or judging people's bodies. How can someone navigate that without isolating themselves in the workplace?
well, I do think that the only control you have is yourself. So then you need to stop talking. If everyone's talking mean about their body, you need to keep your mouth shut.
Mm.
So, and if one on one, if someone brings something up, you don't even like, you just allow it, like, oh my gosh, what are you eating? They're like, oh, I don't know. You just let it go. I remember being at this dance class, and this woman come up to me, oh my gosh, you're so thin. What are you probably don't eat any pasta or like any bread or anything like that. And I was just like, no, I actually just really love my body and love myself.
Mhm.
I know that's cliche because that's the name of my my business, but
Love
um
it.
but it was actually true. And she just kind of was like, it just took all of that out of her and just put her in this other space. So
Mm.
if you're a home of positivity, and if you're a home where you don't talk about these things, and I'm not saying that you may even be feeling good about it. I'm not saying that you have to jump ahead, and now you may still feel really uncomfortable in your body and you may still have all those negative thoughts. But where are you going to go with those? Like, sometimes these negative thoughts, they need a home that can actually be met by someone who gets that those negative thoughts about your body and your food don't have anything to do with your body and your food.
Yes.
Because sometimes we just end up ranting and we're hoping that a friend gets it, but she doesn't get it because she doesn't get that there's an underlying experience that wants to be loved, that has nothing to do with losing the weight, right? It comes from this deep level of, like, I want to love that part of me that feels so uncomfortable,
Mm.
that she wants to beat herself up with how she talks to herself, and she wants to, you know, eat just that salad and a little bit of protein at lunch and act like it's enough, right?
Yeah, it's never
Right.
enough. Yeah.
So it's really not indulging, and that's really the first step. And
Yeah.
then getting more support and realizing that you're worth feeling good about yourself.
Mm. And then you can have a knock-on effect in the most positive way with other people. So I assume that that lady that said that to you and then you had that response, maybe she actually thought about that later that night and pondered on what you said and how you said it.
I
Maybe,
think
maybe not.
I think so. If anything, it there was a seed planted.
Yes.
And how many seeds did I need planted? I mean, how many times, like, I can remember waking up at like 5 in the morning to like run on the treadmill, and I fell asleep because I was too tired and should never been on the treadmill. And that still didn't wake me up, right? It didn't make
Yeah.
me realize that I needed to look. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time. I needed to be hit upside the head to get that I needed support around this area. So it takes what it takes.
It takes what it takes, exactly that. Like my higher self, of course, all of our higher selves, they like just gently tap you first. And if you're not even listening or connected, you won't feel that. Or you might, and you might ignore it. And then one day, in the most loving way possible, she'll slap you around the face, and then you'll be like, okay, I'm listening. And that's what happened for me. That's when like I was at rock bottom and I couldn't anymore, and I just needed a way out. And the way out was already within me, but I had no idea. I was searching for a hole that was within me that needed to be filled, but I didn't even know I was searching for that. And the only thing that could ever fill that is my own love for me.
Exactly. And being courageous enough to not fill that with critical thoughts, with,
Mm.
all the food and all the ways, the dieting that we try to fit into that little hole or that big gaping hole.
Yeah.
And that can be really scary because when we come to this place of like, oh, I actually do need support around this, it can feel like, oh, I'm now addressing what's real. So it's so easy to blame it on the food and to blame it on our body rather than, oh, there's something here that really needs attended to. And
Yeah.
that's where having a guide, a spiritual practice
Mm.
that can help support that, because it can feel scary to actually meet these places.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that we're all getting that we don't have to meet them with like this blinding light. We
Mm.
can go in, we can meet these parts of us, and then we can take a breath, right? So we want to build up resilience. We want to learn how to love ourselves. We want to learn even from some of these past traumas that we've had to realize that some of those are linked to our body image. They are linked to how we eat. And
Yes.
so by actually addressing those, we are addressing and we are supporting ourselves to be more kind, to understand that we can trust this body, we can trust its cues, we can feel more comfortable even in the discomfort. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a very uncomfortable situation. This is uncharted territory.
And that's
I'm
okay.
home, I'm home visiting my family. So I notice when I come back here, I all of a sudden I eat pretty healthy. But when I come back here, I was at a party and I was just like, I really crave all this stuff that I usually don't ever crave.
Mm.
And it makes me feel really uncomfortable. And it makes me feel like I need to do something with it. And then all of a sudden I was just heard this voice that was just like, you don't have to do anything. You just have to sit with the discomfort. I was like, oh yeah.
I forgot that's what I've been doing my entire spiritual growth journey.
Right. And here's another moment. Right.
Yes.
Here's another moment with my food. And for me, it sometimes shows up with my food because that's where sometimes I need it the most. And that's where I'm most willing to listen.
Mm.
I don't want to go backward. I don't ever want to go back into that space I was before. And so I have to be so diligent to make sure that I'm learning how to listen to myself. And what I have found through the years is it's now been less about my body and my food and more about like, okay, I need to love this body for what it's able to do for me during this time of perimenopause, where it's like, I crashed and burned pretty hard. And now it's like, I have to accept that this is what I can do right now. And this
Yeah.
is what I can do before I need more rest. And that has taken me on a whole other journey of surrender.
Yeah. Working with your body, not against your body. And again, that word trust comes into play, doesn't it? To trust that your body is behaving, sending you signals because that's what's going on for her right now, and to honor that and to work with her. And I love what you said. You didn't say this specifically, but you said it in a different way. the problem isn't your body. The problem is how you think and feel towards your body. It's not your body. And when I heard that for the first time, I was like, wait, wait a minute. And I was like, what, really? I have the power to change how I think and feel about my body. So my body's no longer a problem anymore. And I was like really confused because it was almost like it's that simple, not easy, but simple. Wow.
Yeah. And then now what? Right. So
Mm,
now it opens up this whole other road to walk down.
yes.
That's where things get very interesting.
Yes.
Right. So now you've turned away from this old way of being, and you're almost like in the hallway of like, oh, that's what I need to do. And now it's like, now what? And now from this place of now what, if you stay there long enough and you begin to trust yourself, and you willing to call on maybe a spiritual practice or a guide or something to support you, now you're walking down this other path that leads you so far away from diet culture and all these old ways that it's like, wow, who here I am. Here I am. I've been here this whole time and I didn't know I was walking down the wrong road.
Oh, yes. I love that analogy. So true. And that's where we come in, and people like us, that whoever people resonate with, to show who have walked that path and who know the way and who can't walk it for you, but can guide you and can lead you. They can't climb the obstacles for you, but they can show you how to climb them. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what I would do if I wouldn't have had support along the way.
No,
I mean,
me,
I would not be here.
no, same, same.
And it's so important for people to realize that you don't have to go to the depths of despair in order to realize that you need some support,
Definitely.
and how much it will change your life when you do. Things will show up that you never even believed were possible.
Mm,
You know, your relationships will flourish because you will be more present,
mm.
right? You will be allowing yourself to be more of who you are. And that trickles out into everything.
It does. The best way to love yourself is to be yourself. And the question becomes, well, who am I? Well, that's the spiritual and the personal development work to get to know who you are. You know who you are. We do at our core, but sometimes we forget that. We're disconnected. We need to connect and remember.
Right, because it's literally like an identity crisis oftentimes when we come to this place of loving our body and
Yeah.
finding more freedom with our food, is because if I'm not this weight and if I'm not this body, then who am I? And that's a big question.
Yes.
And it's very powerful. And it allows us to go so much more deeper and to access why it is you're actually here.
Right?
Right?
That's the point, in my opinion.
I think it is too.
Yeah. So,
And
oh,
also
sorry.
that trusting, right? That trusting that your body will be what it is.
Yes.
And I think for a lot of people, they feel like if they're doing this, that means they're giving up on themselves.
Mm.
And really want to say that surrender is not giving up. It's actually completely the opposite,
Mm.
because surrender can be really hard, right? So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not like it in those moments where you've given up on yourself, right? And you're like, I just give up. It's usually probably because you were dieting too hard and you needed to give that up anyways. We're not giving up on ourselves. We're going down a different path.
Mm.
Actually learning how we may need to give up something so that we can then show up for ourselves more.
Oh, I
And that,
love that.
yeah, so it can be so challenging when it's like, but I really want to give up this weight thing. And you must be feeling that way if you're listening to this podcast of
Mm.
like, how do I do that? And that inner struggle. And I talked about that earlier, right? Of like surrender, let go. It's like, right?
Yes. I feel that. I love that you said that. And I have two questions left for you, and I'm going to ask you at the same time so you can go in any direction you want. I want to hear about your book. And I also would love for you to give 1 to 2 tangible tips. I know they've come up throughout this conversation that people, if they want to, can start with terms of connecting to their body and feeling better about their bodies and themselves.
Great. Okay. So my book is called Befriend Yourself, Finding Freedom with Food and Peace with Your Body. And I would say that when I wrote this book and I was able to look back at my recovery journey, and what I found is that's what I did. I learned how to become my own best friend. And that tool of thinking of yourself as a friend, would you speak to your friend that way? Would you would you binge eat all of that in such an uncomfortable way to deal with that feeling to a friend? Would you, would you tell her to get up, go work out? Would you do that to a friend?
I hope
So
not.
yeah, right. Probably not a very good friend, right? But we are doing that stuff to ourselves all the time. So oftentimes when we think about tools, we're thinking of them as these, and they are tangible, but they're in the moment, right? So it's in the moment. So I will put it in that context, like for today, I'm going to think of myself as a friend, right? So that I'm constantly asking, would I do that to a friend today? How would I be with myself as a friend? So that's a very intentional way that you can start to become more aware of the things that you're doing to yourself that are not loving.
Yeah.
Right. Is putting it into that context is going to be really, really powerful. And then if you're on a journey, a spiritual journey, I would invite you to bring that idea of prayer into the moments where you're maybe have always struggled and you think you need to figure it out. Right. Or in those moments where you're at the end of your rope, and not even just with your body and your food, but even in relationship, it's like, oh, here we are again. Like, how many times have I had those experiences with my husband? And I'm like, the only thing that's going to help this is prayer, because I've done everything and I don't know how this is going to get any better. Right. It's like, I'm going to just pray about this and just, and then sooner or later, that situation finds another way. My heart opens up in a different way or whatever. So this idea of prayer, and if you don't have a spiritual practice, can you flirt with this idea? Can you lean into it? And I know there's so much trauma that shows up from religion, and there's so much trauma that shows up in this idea of God. So we want to bring it to a place where it is just comfortable enough for you to be like, can I turn that over? Sunshine, burn this away. Grounding cord into the earth. Can I drop some stress in there and leave it there to be recycled?
Yeah.
Right. Those are the moments of turning it over, because these sweet bodies of ours are not supposed to take on the world. We're not supposed to take on all the wars and all the pain that's going on everywhere, right? That's not our responsibility. And even the struggles that we each have in our lives, it is not meant for us, the small me, to figure it all out.
Yeah. We're supported through this. It's not just little human us that have got to figure it all out. We're supported and guided. So like you say, ask for that support. Give it to the universe. I remember reading in, I think it was Asking It Is Given, maybe, the book Asking It Is Given. They did like 3 columns, and one of the columns was the universe. So you'd write down your worries or things that you had to do or something like that, this exercise. And then you chose at least 5 things, depending on how long the list was, to hand over to the universe and leave the universe to figure it out, and just to let that go and give it to the universe, and then watch what happens when you surrender and trust that and just let that go.
Right. And that is so powerful. And it's like those moments where it's like, then I start to worry about it again. And I'm like, oh no, I already gave that over.
Yeah, that's not mine anymore.
Not
The
mine.
universe has got it.
Got it. Okay, I don't.
Yeah, I love that. And Marla, I want to respect your time. So thank you so much for being here. and for sharing what you shared. This hour has flew by. Is there anything that I've not asked you that you did want to share if you have time?
Well, I would love to share that my book, Befriend Yourself, is in pre-order.
Yes.
And so if you want to go ahead and pre-order that, you can go ahead and pre-order that, and you're going to get bonuses. You're going to get my Befriend Yourself workshop that's exclusive for those who've pre-ordered. And there's something. Come here, Luna.
It's all right. We have lives that we get interrupted, dogs, children, and things.
You'll get my Body Compassion Collective course for free if you pre-order.
Oh, wow. So they can do that through your website?
Yes, I'll give you the link for that.
Okay, perfect. And then can people work with you? Are you taking on clients at the moment?
I am taking on clients one-on-one now. So feel free to reach out to me. Happy to talk to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marla. Sending you all the love, and thank you to our listeners as well. Please comment. Please let us know how you find this episode, what feedback you have, and I'll see you next time. Much love.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.